Created by Bob Kane, Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson, the Joker has become one of the most infamous and instantly recognisable characters in all of comic books ever since he first appeared in the pages of Batman issue 1 in April of 1940. Originally brought to life as a simple one and done villain for the series' first issue, the Clown Prince of Crime has not only transcended his initial purpose, becoming the Dark Knight's most popular villain, but in the years since, developed into an immensely iconic and well-known character in his own right, so much so that now, in 2019, he has his very own Batman free movie. And with Joker taking the world by storm, I think that it'd be a good time to look back at the humble beginnings of this twisted and maniacal character. So in this video, we're going to delve into the real life origin story for the Joker, analyse the influences and ideas that played a part in the character's creation, and look at how his early years shaped the character in ways beyond the imagination of his creators, and became the iconic villain that we all know today.
When you bring me out, can you introduce me as Joker?
Before we delve into the origins of the Joker, I first want to start off this video with a little bit of context. Following the initial success of Superman and the Action Comics series, National Allied Publications, the precursor to DC Comics, sought to capitalise on the fledgling superhero genre, sending out a call to all of its various creators to offer up more characters in this vein, leading to Bob Kane and Bill Finger answering the call with their new creation, Batman. Now, I don't want to go too deep into the logistics of how Batman was created, because honestly that's a video in itself, but it is worth noting that how much of what we've come to know as being Batman was created by Kane and/or Finger has remained a hotly contested subject. Regardless though, Batman burst onto the scene in Detective Comics issue 27 from May of 1939 in a story titled The Case of the Chemical Syndicate, which proved an enormous success for National and saw Kane and Finger's Batman character become an overnight sensation. As the character continued to be featured in Detective Comics, many of his now iconic staples and status quos were developed. Maybe the most important addition came in issue 38, when Dick Grayson took up the name Robin and swore to devote his life to fight crime alongside the Caped Crusader, with the dynamic duo being born. Bill Finger especially had a key role in fleshing out the world of Batman. He's often credited as being responsible for the creation of the Batcave, the Batmobile, the name Gotham City, and even the Caped Crusader's alter ego of Bruce Wayne. But by the start of 1940, National, immensely pleased by Batman's continued success, saw the opportunity to take this popularity even further, commissioning Kane, Finger, and a young artist named Jerry Robinson to work on a wholly original and self-titled Batman comic book. As exciting as this was, the trio knew that this would involve a lot of work. A full-time Batman series required brand new adventures, brand new ideas, and most importantly, brand new foes for our heroes to face. They had to start off with a bang. Batman #1 demanded a new and exciting villain that would capture the imagination of its readership, and the character that the three came up with would shake the entire industry to its core. There's a twisted sense of irony to the backstory of the Joker, one shared within the pages of his comics, and also in the real world. For a character built on the mystique of never really having a defined origin story, it's fair to say that the events surrounding his creation in the real world have always shared this sense of mystery. While some elements have remained largely consistent, the story of how Bob Kane, Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson created the Joker has always varied depending on who you listen to. According to Jerry Robinson, when the trio were brainstorming ideas for their new villain, he suggested basing it off a Joker playing card, with Robinson giving the card that had inspired him over to Kane and Finger, with the pair agreeing that it would be a good design for the new character. However, Finger felt something was missing, leading to him suggesting taking inspiration from Conrad Veidt's character Gwynplaine from the 1928 silent film The Man Who Laughs, and when these two ideas were meshed together, the Joker was born. As Robinson recalls,
In that first meeting, when I showed him that sketch of the Joker, Bill said it reminded him of Conrad Veidt in The Man Who Laughs. That was the first mention of it. He can be credited, and Bob himself. We all played a role in it. The concept was mine. Bill finished that first script from my outline of the persona and what should happen in the first story. He wrote the script of that, so he really was the co-creator. And Bob and I did the visuals, so Bob was also.
And while these two events in themselves, the Joker playing card and Finger recommending The Man Who Laughs, have all been confirmed by the three parties, the timeline when each of these inspirations were brought to the table does seem to vary. For example, as Bob Kane recalled in a 1994 interview with Entertainment Weekly,
Bill Finger and I created the Joker. Bill was the writer. Jerry Robinson came to me with a playing card of the Joker. That's the way I sum it up. The Joker looks like Conrad Veidt, you know, the actor in The Man Who Laughs. Bill Finger had a book with a photograph of Conrad Veidt and showed it to me and said, "Here's the Joker." Jerry Robinson had absolutely nothing to do with it, but he'll always say he created it. He brought in a playing card, which we used for a couple issues for him to use as his playing card.
However, it's not without reason for me to second guess the claims made by Bob Kane. So instead, in order to make sense of the timeline, it's worth cross-examining Robinson's account of the events with that of Bill Finger's. As he noted in a 1966 interview,
"I got a call from Bob Kane. When I arrived, he was holding a playing card. Apparently Jerry Robinson, or Bob, I don't recall who, looked at the card and had an idea for the character, the Joker. Bob made a rough sketch of it. At first it didn't look much like the Joker, but I remembered that Grosset and Dunlap formerly issued very cheap editions of classics by Alexandre Dumas and Victor Hugo. The volume I had was The Man Who Laughs. His face had been permanently operated on so that he will always have a perpetual grin. I cut the picture out of the book and gave it to Bob, who drew the profile and gave it a more sinister aspect. Then he worked on the face, made him look a little clown-like, which accounted for his white face, red lips, green hair, and that was the Joker."
And when you look at these two accounts of the Joker's creations beside each other, I think you can form something of a timeline. Maybe Jerry Robinson brought the attention of his playing card to Kane and Finger, and then Finger, attempting to find a way to make the sketch appear more menacing, showed the pair his photos of Conrad Veidt in The Man Who Laughs. Kane and Robinson then may have took the drawing and tweaked their initial sketches, adding the distinct grin and the frightening demeanour, and creating the Joker design that has remained largely unchanged ever since. In fact, in a 2006 interview, Robinson made another statement which suggests as much. He noted how
Bill Finger knew of Conrad Veidt because Bill had been to a lot of the foreign films. Veidt had this clown makeup with the frozen smile on his face. When Bill saw the first drawing of the Joker, he said, "That reminds me of Conrad Veidt in The Man Who Laughs." He said he would bring in some shots of that movie to show me. That's how that came about. I think in Bill's mind, he fleshed out the concept of the character.
it seems like, depending on who you ask, two of the three creators were always heavily involved in the process. If you ask Bob Kane, he and Bill Finger created the Joker, with Robinson's sketch being produced after Finger had already shown Kane the photo of Conrad Veidt. If you ask Jerry Robinson, it was him and Finger that created the Joker, with Bob Kane merely helping out to sketch the pair's ideas. And if you ask Bill Finger, well, one of them suggested the playing card, and then he brought his Gwynplaine influences into the design. But regardless of the order in which it may have happened, or who exactly contributed what, the trio had come up with their main villain for the first issue of Batman's solo series, and with that, it was time to showcase him to the world. Batman issue 1 was released in March of 1940, and the Joker was unleashed to an unsuspecting world. In a story written by Bill Finger, the now iconic villain made his chilling presence known to Gotham City, casting a gruesome threat over the radio and announcing the names and times of death of his future victims, daring Batman and the GCPD to stop him. Batman does catch his new foe and places the villain behind bars, though it's his second appearance in the comic later on in that same issue that is particularly noteworthy. You see, up until this point, Batman didn't have any recurring antagonists, no villains to come back and torment the Dark Knight in later stories, and this wasn't by accident. As Brian Cronin notes, Bill Finger was not one for recurring villains. If you went up against the Batman, odds were you were going to end up dying in some manner at the end of the issue. And you can understand Finger's apprehension at the time about having villains return, with the idea being that having a villain face off against the Dark Knight and then return in a later story would make Batman seem ineffectual. And so whilst the Joker got 2 different stories within the pages of Batman issue 1, clearly he was going to meet his end by the time the comic wrapped. And he almost did, if it wasn't for the intervention of DC editor Whitney Ellsworth. Ellsworth, who was heavily opposed to the idea of Batman killing his foes, also saw the clear potential in the Joker character and ordered the trio to keep the Clown Prince of Crime alive so that he could return for later stories. As a result, the Joker appeared again in Batman issue 2 and went on to become a staple of these early issues. Between 1940 and 1956, the Joker appeared in at least one Batman comic every month, cementing himself as a quintessential part of the Dark Knight's mythos, attaining a status of villainy that few other characters have ever achieved. The Joker continued to be a staple of Batman comics throughout the subsequent decades, though changes made to DC stories as a result of the Comics Code Authority saw the once homicidal murderer evolve into a more cartoonish prankster by the 1950s. As Glenn Weldon puts it, Joker's schemes grew more baroque. Exit Joker, the maniacal murderer, enter Joker, the cackling cut-up of the crime world. It would be this rendition of the character that captured the imagination of a generation, with Cesar Romero's take on the character in the popular 60s TV show being heavily inspired by this Silver Age Joker. In fact, it wasn't until the 1970s when the team of Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams took over the Batman series that the Clown Prince of Crime returned to his homicidal roots, with O'Neil and Adams keen to recapture the essence of the Joker as he was originally created by Bob Kane, Bill Finger and Jerry Robinson. As O'Neil stated himself,
"The idea was simply to take it back to where it started. I went to the DC library and read some of the early stories. I tried to get a sense of what Kane and Finger were after."
The Joker's 5-way revenge, as told in the pages of Batman issue 251 from September of 1973, was the return to form for the iconic villain, who had actually been absent from comics for 4 years at this point, with the story detailing the Joker escaping prison and tracking down members of his former gang, killing them off one by one and drawing the attention of his arch enemy. Joker ambushes Batman and taunts his foe but refuses to kill him, instead gaining the satisfaction of being able to outsmart the world's greatest detective. After Batman regains his consciousness, he deduces where the Joker's hideout is, racing to find him holding the final gang member hostage above a shark tank, with the Joker agreeing to let him go only if Batman takes the place above the tank. Batman ultimately subdues the shark, saves the hostage's life and chases down the Joker, beating his foe and dragging him back to the authorities. Though it's a very simple and straightforward story, Adams and O'Neil managed to recapture the magic of the original 1940s Joker stories, returning the character to its roots and redefining the public perception of the character for a whole new generation. And without their work, it's unlikely that many of our beloved modern iterations of the Joker would exist today. The Joker has gone through a number of evolutions ever since Kane, Finger and Robinson brought him to life. From a homicidal mobster, to a comedic prankster, to a sadistic killer, to an eccentric obsessed with his duality with Batman, to an agent of pure chaos, and to whatever Jared Leto was supposed to be. The point is though, the character's longevity and malleability has made him one of the most popular and iconic villains in all of comics history. The Joker can be so many things, and yet still be so uniquely identifiable as the Joker. But with all of that said, I do find it extremely interesting to go back and look at the origins behind this iconic villain, and see the humble beginnings of a character brought to life by 3 greats, with surely little idea of the chaos they would unleash to the world, and how, even as the character lost his way throughout the Silver Age, a refined focus by one of Batman's most important and greatest creative teams saw a new breath of life be breathed into the Joker, and a focus that would last for numerous decades and ensure that the Joker would remain an integral part of not only Batman, but comics and media as a whole. And regardless of the interpretation and the iteration, whether it be in the comics or live action or animated, the Joker will always continue to have the last laugh. Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to leave a like on the video and leave a comment down below as well. Let me know your thoughts on the backstory and the origin of the Joker. Whose account of his creation do you believe most? And how do you think he's impacted comics in the years after his first appearance? And if you've seen the new Joker movie, let me know your thoughts on that down below as well. I can't wait to hear what you all have to say as always. I want to give a big special thanks to all of the wonderful and talented people who lent their voices in the video. All of their links will be in the description, but thank you to Scott, to Alex, to Matt and to Captain Midnight. You're all wonderful and I very much appreciate your help. If you're new to Owen Likes Comics, please consider hitting the subscribe button so you can stay up to date with all of the new videos we make, and there should be some other videos on screen right now that you might enjoy if you did indeed enjoy this one. That's all for me. You can follow me on Twitter just at Owen Likes Comics, but I will see you all next time. So until then, take care and keep reading.